I think it's pretty much safe to say that for most of you, if you haven't already, buying a home is a lifelong dream. And usually when someone says, I want to buy a home, two immediate emotions typically come to mind for a first-time buyer. Number one, excitement. Number two, stress. And I don't think that it helps that most agents don't educate their clients, but rather grab their hands and just run them through the finish line, making it almost a very chaotic experience. I'm a firm believer that education and understanding what you're getting yourself into is ultimately what's going to give you peace of mind at night so that you understand the process for the next few months. With that being said, I'm going to share with you the entire home buying process, start to finish, in the simplest words that I can come up with so that you can have sounding sleep at night and not be stressed out. Number one, you need to get a pre-approval. You don't go shopping without your credit card. So getting a pre-approval is essentially calling up a lender, preferably a direct lender, so they can shop you around multiple banks, but who you use is up to you. And essentially this lender is going to look at a handful of things in your financial department: income, debt to income ratio, assets, liabilities, debt, all of these things to come up essentially with a budget that you're going to be allocated to buy a home. I'm quickly going to graze past step number two, and that is to pick an agent. You can pick whomever you wish, but obviously you want to pick someone that is qualified, that knows how to negotiate, knows how to present well, and most importantly, who are you going to connect with the most? Who are you going to have an enjoyable time with the most? And who do you want backing you in the corner in moments when you need to trust someone and you need someone to advocate for you? Step number three, you have an agent and you have a pre-approval letter. So essentially you have your school backpack on. You're ready to go out into the world and explore. So this is your time to be touring houses, going to open houses, booking private showings with your agent, finding that dream house of yours that you want to write an offer in. Now, when that time comes, when you feel like you found a place, you want to submit an offer, this is when you sit down and strategize with your agent and figure out what terms you're going to offer. Now, your agent will hopefully advocate for the best terms in order to put you in a very good position, but usually covering different topics such as your purchase price, how long is your escrow, how long are your contingency periods, if the seller or the buyer will be paying the home warranty, the list goes on. This is your agent's job to educate and guide you to present the best that you can. Now, once you've presented your offer, three different things can happen. Number one, they could accept right off the bat, which, to be honest, is quite rare. Option number two, they could just completely decline it. Or option number three, which is the most common and standard you'll pretty much see in every transaction, that is you'll receive some form of a counter. Now, if it's a seller multiple counter offer, that means that multiple people are receiving that counter. Or if it's a seller counter offer that is directed to you and you only, if you agree on that counter and you sign off on it, you are officially under contract and officially in a position to open escrow. Now, with that, either you can accept those terms that they've been countered to, or you can counter back. Now, for most people, it usually takes a few tries to end up landing an accepted offer on any property, at least in Los Angeles. It's a little competitive out here, and usually you need to give it a few shots. But eventually, you will get an accepted offer, and that leads to our next step, which is opening escrow. Now, this is your agent's opportunity to really lead this part of the transaction. Now, in the first 3 days of escrow, you will be required to send your earnest money deposit, which is 3% of the purchase price, to the escrow account. This is a temporary hold for your down payment, your earnest money deposit, essentially being in good faith that you intend to go through this transaction step by step as closely as you can. If for some reason you choose to cancel before we lift our contingencies, you will receive that money back. Second step, this is the most important period, and that is your due diligence period. This is your time to do home inspections. Make sure that the home is in good condition to buy. And if there is any sort of problem or concern that's discovered during this time, this is your opportunity to have it corrected. Now, I could do a full separate video about all the different types of inspections that you can do, but ask your agent what they recommend. It will vary between a single family home and a condo, but you need to do as much homework as you can. Typically, you will find something wrong with a house, whether it's new construction or an older home. That's just the reality of real estate. There's usually something that needs to be fixed. And in that case, if it's serious enough issue, we will collect all of our information. We will reach out to experts to provide quotes for us, and then we will put it all together in one big package to present to the cooperating side and ask for either a credit or ask for the seller to essentially take care of the repair before we close escrow. I know I said a lot of words. This, I promise, is not a time for you to be stressed. This is just a time for you to be aware of everything that's going on in the home, and your agent will lead you through this entire section of escrow. You are going to start receiving a ton of documents, a ton of disclosures, and these are all for you to review. The two most popular in there are the TDS, the Transfer Disclosure Statement, and the SPQ, the Seller Property Questionnaire. These are the two main documents for the seller to disclose anything that they may or may not know about the home, and you'll have to read through and sign off on it. Now, during this time, your lender will be reaching out to you pretty much on a daily basis with paperwork, disclosures, all related to the financing side. But the most important step through this financing portion is ordering an appraisal. Now, as an agent, they will make sure that this appraisal is scheduled into your due diligence period. An appraisal, the easiest way to put it, is someone, an appraiser, that is a third party person to the transaction. They're not benefiting the seller side and they're not benefiting the buyer side. They come in and essentially will value the home in its current state in that day and age of the market. And this number is ultimately the number that the lender will loan your loan upon. Now, if there is a difference between the appraisal and the purchase price, that is when we come in and either negotiate with the seller or find a solution to cover that missing gap between the two. Most homes will appraise. I wouldn't worry about it. My job as an agent is to ensure that when we go under contract, you're submitting an offer that is true to market value and that we're not putting you in a position where you're paying way over price for a home that's just not worth it. Escrow is pretty much a time for you to be processing that your home is pretty much weeks away from becoming officially yours. Now, during this time, you will finish up all of your contingencies, and the main three are your loan, your appraisal, and your inspections. If all checks out in all three departments, we will then officially remove our contingencies. By removing these contingencies, you as a buyer is ultimately telling the seller, you will be closing on this house, and if for some reason you do cancel, you will lose your 3% earnest money deposit to the seller. Now, this is so rare for this to really happen where you find a reason to cancel once you lift contingencies. Buyers are usually educated. I always educate my clients to know that when you lift your contingencies, this is you saying, I'm giving the green light. This all checks out and we're ready to close. Now, in the last week of escrow, and typically escrow is an average of 30 days, but it can be negotiated. And usually in that last week of escrow, you will meet with your agent and we will do something called a final walkthrough. This is just to make sure that the house looks like exactly how we initially purchased it, or if we had the seller do any repairs for you, this is the time for us to ensure that the work was completed just as we requested. Now, during the last week of escrow, you will also end up wiring to escrow your remaining down payment, and we will always, always, always call the escrow company to ensure that the wiring instructions are correct and that the money is going to the correct place. Wire fraud is a huge, significant issue, and we have to make sure that this is safe and we have the right numbers down. Now, 2 to 3 days before closing, you will meet at the escrow office to sign live signatures for your loan paperwork, your loan docs, essentially clearing everything to go through for funding. Typically, the next day, the loan will be funded, and then the following day is when you will ultimately close and record on the home. I hope this video was helpful, educational, answered some of your questions. Feel free to please share this with friends, family, or colleagues if they're thinking of buying a home. And if you have any questions, please comment down below. I will be happy to answer any questions, and I will answer them with no obligation. Have an amazing day, and I will see you next time.